an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Magicians, Season 3, Episode 3, The Losses of Magic. In this episode, we get to spend some more time with Alice's terrible family, and there's some weird shit going on with the ships in this world. I don't like any of these developments. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. First of all, thank you very much to Nicole for commissioning this episode. This episode for me felt really packed, and there are always a lot of things happening in every episode, but not necessarily every event feels like it moves things forward a ton. And this felt like we got kind of catapulted forward, actually. I was really thrown also by where it all ends. And I have to admit, when we almost end. I believe that there's like a little 5-minute tag at the end, but Penny dying or proving to be dead is like nearly the end of the episode. And a large part of me feels kind of like I don't really know what there's left to be done with Penny. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't bring him back. Like, Penny's not dead, right? He was astral projecting when he died. So his body has died, but his actual spirit hasn't like moved on anywhere. He's standing right there in the room. And from what we saw, it's not like there's an immediate, okay, your body is dead, so your consciousness is getting transported somewhere else against your will. It seems like the fact that he was projecting when his body died sort of protects him from dying in the traditional manner. So I am assuming everything is going to be fine. Like, there's no way that he's going to die. At the same time, I don't really have a lot of interest in him anymore. I like him and Katie together, but the two of them at times feel like they're on a different show. Honestly, they feel like they're on a show that I get more interested in than this show sometimes, because the two of them are probably they are in a world that is less sort of absurd than Fillory is, because they're in our universe, or in Penny's case, he's with the librarians. And him and Katie both tend to make decisions that make sense to me, versus somebody like Quentin, who does things that I don't really understand, or even Julia, whom she does things sometimes that I'm just kind of like, okay, I mean, I understand part of this, I feel like, but not really. I don't understand it wholly the way that I want to. So I feel like I understand the two of them more. And when I say that I don't really want to come back to them, I guess really what I mean is I want them to continue to have like their own adventures and for them to get a spin-off. I don't want them to continually be roped into the ridiculous drama that goes on with everybody else, because the two of them feel like they have really been put through the ringer in a different way and deserve to like be settled, you know? When it comes to like Margo and Elliot, I don't feel like they have grown up much. It's not like they're not trying, but they haven't achieved it yet. So I feel like Katie and Penny feel almost like they've leveled up and the other characters haven't. Julia is probably a close second. It feels like she has, after everything that she has been through, she is probably leveled up also. But she has only gone through most of that stuff in the last, like, half season. And I feel like Katie was going through it when the show began with her mom, you know? And obviously Penny, too, with him, like, being unable to shut voices out of his head and everything. So, anyway, that's my feeling on the thing, is that it's not like I don't like their characters. It's just I feel really differently about them than I do about everybody else. So, all right, let's back it up and go to the start of this episode. Because Alice has come home in order to try and, like, hide out from the lamprey. She is essentially attempting to find a safe house. And she's got a new cat with her and tries to explain to her mother, who is really upset that she hasn't been home to visit before, that shit has just been really weird for her since, like, turning from a Niffin back into a person. And her mother, in the most on-brand response ever, is basically just like, I don't care. We're your parents. You should have been here. Now, this plot with Alice, this is like maybe top 3 favorite things that this show has done. I have been really hard on them for bringing Alice back because plots do that, and I just get really bored with it. And it tends to feel like a lazy solution, fan servicey, generally just like we don't really feel like putting in the time to develop a new character. We're going to just pull back this person from the brink of death or destruction or whatever. But what they've done this episode is really interesting to me. First of all, they have her parents, like, dealt with in a different way. Dealt with being one of them dies. But what I mean is her mother, I feel like there is a really nice balance that they have struck with Alice's mother in portraying her as deeply selfish and selfish in a way that permeates literally everything that she does, but making it just shy of really outright abusive so that people who watch this will probably be able to relate, if not their own experience with their parents, at least their experience with somebody close to them, to this relationship. There is a lot of talk about cutting toxic people out of your life nowadays, which is something that I 100% agree with and believe is necessary, and a difficult skill that I believe all of us really could use and learn from. It's something that's like I say skill because you need to learn to manage all of your thoughts and the way that you look at the past in order to successfully cut a toxic person from your life. It is not as simple as just, I will not have contact with you anymore. There has to be a change in the way you see things and see yourself. And I believe that's a skill that you have to develop. It is really easy to identify people who are outright abusive and understand that they don't deserve a relationship with you anymore. It is a lot more difficult to cut somebody like this from your life who is damaging, but doesn't feel constantly like they're doing harm. It's everything that she does individually as examples are all just under the radar of really like contemptible. When you see them all together as a person, us viewers are like, oh my God, she is awful. But what we tend to do, especially when it's somebody related to us, is we sort of like diminish our own experience. So we're like, yeah, I mean, over the years, it really gets to be a lot, but I really need to learn to cope with it better, is often the way that we talk to ourselves. We act as if we need to be more compassionate or understanding, that somehow the fact that we're getting irritated over allegedly petty stuff is like our fault and an indicator of us being petty ourselves. And I really love the show giving us a character like this and the complicated nature of her relationship with Alice. And the fact it's not that she like just doesn't love her daughter. I believe that she does, but it doesn't really matter when you're like this with somebody. If you love them, but you have it seems like she has no actual capacity to put Alice first. It's like that's missing for her somehow. Love isn't enough. And on top of that, there's this relationship with Alice and her mother has been true from, the first time we met them. But now we have the extra layer of Alice having experienced something far outside of a human experience and being deeply changed because of this. And this is what winds up coming up between her and Quentin at the end of the episode. She's talking to him and she says something like, when you look at me, I feel like you're seeing the other Alice. I can see like her reflected in your eyes when you look at me. That is not who I am anymore. And I can't get back to it. You are acting as if us sleeping together and going through the motions of being who we were, me going to classes and shit with you again, you are acting as if this would somehow bring back a dormant version of her that has been overshadowed by a version of me that you don't like as much. No, that's not how this works. We are made of the same clay, and there isn't a separate piece that's like the Alice I liked hidden somewhere that you can go excavate. The clay I'm made from has been reshaped into a different thing, and you can't undo that. So that we see throughout this story here. It's interesting because she kind of like, you would really expect Alice that's like grown a bit harsher and less patient and more bloodthirsty to lash out at her mother more than she does. But I really enjoy the fact that it seems like something as deep in your marrow as your relationship with your mother isn't as easy to change as a lot of your other behavior, even for somebody who turned into a Niffin for a minute. I think that's like, that feels true. That feels magically accurate. And so this whole section of the story, this episode, is Alice really internally struggling with like how to deal with being around somebody who undoes who she is, even when she has changed. The thing about like family that's so strange is that you can grow up and move on with your life and feel like you have become a totally different person to the degree that who you were feels like a dream. But then you go home and you're around your parents and your siblings or aunts and uncles that you spent a lot of time with and immediately transform back into that child, even though you really thought that was gone forever. And it's hard to shake. So I like the idea that Alice, like, yeah, she became a Niffin, whoop-de-doo. When she's around her mom, she is still full of rage and resentment and everything, and like unsure of herself and sort of like fundamentally off balance in the way that she was as a human. Niffin rage and human rage are going to be very different. And I find this to be kind of fascinating. I don't know how much of this was intentional by the writers and how much of this is me like reading into it. But there's a reason there are so many like family dramas that are successful. Family psychology is compelling, and it's very different for everyone because our relationships are so different. But there are some fundamental aspects of it that are kind of the same for everyone, you know, that are just something that we can all relate to, even if the way that we are with our parents isn't the same. So yeah, and there's this weird thing. There's their friend Carol. She is the one that had been having like the relationship with Alice's mom and her father. And it turns out between Carol and their home, magic going away has changed a lot of things. So apparently Carol used to use a lot of illusion magic to make herself look thinner than she is. And now that that magic is gone and she has to be seen as she is, she drinks a lot, which is a bit of a problematic thing, but it doesn't feel like something that wouldn't happen, you know? So I'm just like, all right. But more interesting is the fact that there was a lot of magical architecture that had been used on the house that falls apart now that magic is gone. And not just magical architecture, but apparently they had like had something set up where their house was like, I don't know if it was invisible or if they had done something to the records magically to keep them from being noticed, but they haven't paid taxes on their house in years, and their house is about to be taken away from them. And this is all causing Alice's mother to have a bit of a pity party. And I say this with complete awareness that if I had a home that I had put a lot of work into, that was really like mine, and it was suddenly being taken from me, of course I would be upset. But they have been achieving everything that they're doing via lies and generally just kind of and I'm saying lies knowing that like one could argue magic and lies aren't the same thing. They can be. I mean, they're using magic to fake stuff. The architecture, you know, maybe less important, but you're getting out of paying taxes, and then you're complaining when that eventually catches up to you. Hashtag rich people problems. I am not sorry for you. And she actually says to Quentin in this scene, like, I sometimes wonder if Alice's brother wasn't the lucky one. She's literally saying, I think dying would be preferable to losing my home and having one of my lovers turn out to be fat and like having less guest rooms. She's like, what are we going to have to do? Get jobs? Like, she's the worst. She's awful. And Quentin has to go and comfort her because that's like what he does. He's trying to be a mediating force between this woman and Alice. So he is attempting to calm her down. And in order to do that, he has to humor her a little. Y'all, I don't think I could have done it. It's so gross. And so like the saying maybe my dead son got off better is just, it's so unforgivable. I can't help but wonder what Alice would say if she heard her mother say those words. I don't know that maybe she wouldn't say anything because Alice seems to be kind of used to her mother being self-pitying and extremely dramatic. But I like to think that she would have lashed out a bit about that. So that all is going on. While in the other part of the house, Alice is dealing with trying to figure out where this lamprey is. And when she first comes in, she's got this cat, and it has like a reaction to Carol a little bit, to which she decides that like Carol must be the lamprey. And she has done some research, or is it her father who has? But one of them has like figured out that lampreys do not react well to like electricity. So they have basically created a cattle prod that they're going to use on whomever the lamprey is occupying to disable that person's body and force the lamprey out. And she does this to Carol. It turns out that Carol is not the lamprey. I was really thankful that when Quentin shows up, it is like immediate that her father picks up on the fact that Quentin's the lamprey. He sees it moving around underneath Quentin's skin. I thought that was going to be like a thing that went on all episode. And while it does turn, like figuring out who the lamprey is does take most of the episode, the fact that it wasn't Quentin the whole time made it a lot less boring and predictable. And they went in a more interesting direction with it. So Quentin like flees at first when they start to zero in on him. And then when she finally catches up to him in the garage, the lamprey has left his body. And, you know, I could really understand if people had a problem with her believing Quentin when he says this. But I thought that he did a good job of behaving in a way that made you trust what he said to be true. I believed him watching it. I wasn't suspicious that the lamprey was controlling him. There was just something about the way he was acting that made me be like, yeah, okay, it's gone. And it obviously has moved on to another person, but at this point they don't know who. And they don't know why it left Quentin either, because she's thinking that lamprey's here to kill her. Why wouldn't it just have killed her when it was in Quentin? It could have, but it didn't. And even Quentin, who, when he's got the lamprey in him, he can apparently sort of hear what the lamprey is thinking. He says something about how, like, yeah, you were walking by it and it could have killed you, but it didn't want to. And I don't know why that is. And apparently he can't tell that the lamprey is thinking about laying eggs, because that's what we discover. The lamprey is moving from person to person in an attempt to leave eggs in each of them and basically restart its family that Alice killed. So eventually, after this big standoff, it turns out that the lamprey is in her dad. And it's great. I really enjoyed this. The lamprey talking to her through her father. It is a weird, surreal moment. So this all started with her, like, she's yelling at her mother at one point because her mother is really not taking it seriously that this thing is after Alice. She keeps insisting she is taking it seriously, but I mean, it's so clear to everybody that's not true. And she downplays what happened by saying something like, oh, forgive me for not like worrying about the fact that you stepped on something's magical toes. And Alice snaps and is like, I didn't step on its toes. I experimented on, tortured, and murdered its entire family. I was a monster. And what you think is just so, like, you just don't get it and you don't want to hear it. And I don't know what to say. I'm just going to tell you. I'm just going to tell you the truth, which causes her mother to, like, pull away and have that whole scene with Quentin. So we take that in that moment as the truth, because it's harsh and terrible. And, you know, we are assuming that since Alice didn't say this right out of the gate, this is as bad as it gets. But then when the lamprey comes through her father and is asking her, why did you kill my family? What knowledge did you gain when you were killing them? Alice admits that she literally did not gain any knowledge at all, nor did she intend to. She killed them because they made pretty lights as they died. And when they died slower, the lights became even prettier. Guys, I love it. I love that she was just like evil for fun, and that she remembers it and remembers what it feels like and kind of still feels that way. Because when she kills this lamprey, which she does, she watches the lights flickering up. It's like cinders sort of rising from the body as it disintegrates, with an eagerness and an enjoyment that to me indicates Niffin Alice is still in there a little. Like the enjoyment of it for the sake of it, regardless of the cruelty it's inflicting on a living thing, is 100% present still. And that is unnerving. And, you know, we had been told about like the torture artist, I think is what the cock of the woods or the forest or whatever he says. You know, I knew immediately that that had to be Alice, but I didn't know the extent of that. I didn't, when he said torture artist, I kind of thought that was maybe harsh, but it turns out true. Like, if anything, it's kind, because they're using the word artist as if to imply that there's like worth to it, when really, I don't think so. And so this is kind of an interesting, because like having somebody on a show or in a book die and come back evil. I mean, again, that can be done really boring and just be almost predictable in its way. But doing this, she comes back as evil, kind of, but she's like evil away from us. She's not hanging around committing evil like around her friends. She's not kind of betraying them or doing anything to undermine their plans. She's off in other galaxies and universes, being evil on a scale and in a way that we couldn't really understand, and then comes back and retains a bit of that as a human again. This is different and much more fun and much more alarming. And so when she has the conversation later with Quentin telling him like that Alice is gone, she's not coming back, and they're like, who I am now is informed by what I went through. I don't think that it could have had the same impact, that conversation, if we hadn't found out this truth, that she was torturing and killing creatures just for the funsies of watching the lights they made as they died. That changes all of that. And I don't know that Quentin really gets it, because he was apparently unconscious for that conversation, and she doesn't seem interested in informing him. So does he really understand when she says like, this is just who I am and that's not changing? Does he get it? Or is he is he interested in trying to get it? Does he think she's wrong and that she's underestimating that there's still a real Alice in there? I don't know. You know, I feel like, I don't know. So that remains to be seen. I feel like Quentin might still be holding out for old Alice to come back somehow. And I just don't think after what she's done and experienced, that's ever happening. I think she's 100% correct. But I don't know that he believes that. We'll see. So anyway, that's pretty much that storyline. Now let's talk about the fucking deal with the pirates, which is a weird thing. So Elliot is looking at this key and he doesn't understand. He's on the ship again. They're leaving, you know. He doesn't understand the deal with this key, what it unlocks. He knew what it was when he saw it, but now that he has it in his hand, he can't seem to like make it do anything. And he wants to send a message to Quentin and get a rabbit. So they're looking at some maps, and he says something about how the islands don't like to be mapped, so they move around. and they have to sort of estimate where they're going to be heading. And all of a sudden they are interrupted because there are pirates that are going to try and board the ship. And we wind up finding out a little bit later that because magic is gone, the fact that these, the pirates are having a hard go of it. And I don't know what they did in order to sort of do better when they had magic. I would imagine using it as a weapon, but also maybe using it to travel faster, calling up a magical wind and maybe being able to use a locator spell to find out where other ships are and head toward them more quickly and easily. But they've fallen on hard times just like everyone. The flag that those pirates are flying means no quarter given. And they wind up boarding the ship as Elliot and his daughter and Fen are fleeing downstairs trying to decide what to do. And he notices this outline of this door that is in the ship. And I really enjoy Fen in this scene. She is prepared to fucking fight these pirates. She is just such a goober. I love Fen. She's a weirdo. But yeah, he notices this keyhole and he goes and puts the key in it. An outline of a door appears. And this is a parallel somewhere that they are able to escape to. So that his little map maker guy winds up wearing the crown and pretending to be Elliot when Margo and company meet up with them later. Margo manages to get to the ship in record time because she has made another deal with the Fae. It's not even a deal. She hasn't traded anything. It's more that she convinces the Fairy Queen that if Elliot gets taken down by fucking pirates of all things, that is really going to undermine his credibility and his authority to a lot of people. So we really need to go to his rescue, not just because I care about my friend, but also politically. It's important to be able to take care of your own. Otherwise, how fucking weak do you look? And the Fairy Queen seems to agree with this, and they head out. And there is a really amazing moment with Tick, who tells Margo that he knows how to pickpocket, that was something that he used to do and be really good at. And hints in the way that he does that he will steal back her eyeball. And at first he says, "You're familiar with my family's reputation around the court as pickpockets." And she says, "I've heard. What's your point?" And he says, "My skills in this field could be useful to you." And she says, "I'll keep an eye on my jewels. Are we done here?" Guys, I know that this is her character, but I just want to express my deep frustration with Margo especially, but other characters as well sometimes, not listening to the people around them at all. This guy isn't coming and telling you about his pickpocketing skills as you're about to go meet a pirate king for no reason. He's not just coming at you to brag out of nowhere. What do you think he's coming to talk to you about, you dum-dum? And she finally catches on because he's bitch, and looks over at the Fairy Queen holding her eyeball in a cage around her wrist. But sincerely, you cannot be a good leader if this is the way you react to anybody coming at you with any information, which is kind of been par for her. She needs to get better at this part of the job, listening to other people and putting it together that folks aren't just wasting her time. They're all invested. You're all on the same ship with the same pirates. He's not going to be fucking with you for no reason. So anyway, she goes below decks to meet the Pirate King, who, it turns out, is a hot woman. And this person is hey, hey, so what you up to? You want to hook up maybe? Because I could do that. I would be happy with it. And Margo is very receptive to this. And I kind of enjoy her flirtatiousness, like the Margo that we have seen when it comes to sex has always been really, really aggressive in a way that has no sort of soft edge to it. Either she's talking about sex with Elliot and there's a real sort of like predatory vibe to the way she discusses it. Or we saw her like hook up with what's-his-face, whom she like literally grabbed by the balls. And this is the first time that we really get somebody kind of like that makes her smile a little bit, which is what turns out to be such a shame about how this all goes. Maybe we could take a private cabin and parlay a thing or two on our own. And she says, yeah, I'm hot. You're extremely hot yourself, but you just took over my goddamn boat, which tells me you're not one to pay attention to a safe word. What's a safe word? Exactly. So this pirate king tells her that we can parlay our way out of here, but one thing is not optional. And the deal is that my boat wants to fuck your boat. It has to make your boat submit. And my immediate reaction was, my God, she wants to rape the boat. But it takes Margo a little longer to come to that conclusion. She has to talk with Tick and what's mapmaker guy's name? But they tell her about the effect that this can have, that she is potentially like going to land this boat in dry dock because it will become irritable and distracted and never really be the same again. And she says, that sounds like PTSD. And then she realizes and is like, are you saying that they want us to let our boat get raped? At which point Tick is like, essentially, yeah, that's exactly right. And Margo has already had a couple of moments of really like emphasizing her concerns about, I mean, she just talked about the safe word earlier, her deal with the dude in a previous episode. And she talks about how like, you know, what could possibly go wrong marrying a guy who has no understanding of consent when she's talking to Elliot. She has brought up her feelings on this a few times. And I don't know if that means that she's just very sensitive to the idea or if she is a survivor herself. But she has a awareness to her. And when they say this, she kind of, you can see the panic in her face as she understands exactly what it is. Like when she says, let our boat get raped, that could easily be a funny line in somebody else's hands. And I don't mean actually funny. I mean, they could treat it as if it were a bit of a punchline. When Margo says it, she's like, oh, like got tears in her eyes. Like, this is not whimsical and cute. This is incredibly fucked up in a personal way. And I really appreciated that there's nothing cute or funny about this and that nobody sees it that way either. Like the Pirate King, when it explains this to her, they don't treat this like a joke. And when Tick and the Map Maker explain it to her, they are genuinely concerned for the boat's welfare in a way that is honestly kind of precious, considering that a lot of people would be like, it's just a boat, whatever. I mean, granted, the Map Maker is like, I really don't want this to happen, but also if the boat doesn't allow it, they will kill the whole crew. So, you know, I just really enjoy the fact that everybody involved is like acknowledging this for what it is and treating it with the solemnity that this subject requires. And she decides that she is going to go and speak to what is the name of it? Is it like the heart tree? Something like that. This tree that has its like glowing center. And she explains to the tree like who she is. And there's a great line of like, I used to think that pirates were kind of cute in a Johnny Depp sort of way. But it turns out the real thing is kind of dirty and fucked up in a Johnny Depp sort of way. Pretty good line. Look, I could just order you to do it, but you're clearly alive, whatever that means. You have thoughts and feelings. And I guess what I'm asking is, what do you want to do? And she says this and sort of waits as if she's going to get a verbal answer. Of course she doesn't. But she doesn't really know what else to do. And I love the fact that she decides to ask. I mean, that seems like a really good way to handle it. To be respectful and at least attempt to get consent if you can. Find out what's going on with this boat. You know, like, I thought this was really smart of her. And she walks away, and it turns out that right behind the tree was the Fairy Queen. And she is evidently kind of moved by the fact that Margo decided that she was going to take the tree's well-being into account. And so when Margo goes up again to see the Pirate King, all of the pirates' throats have been cut. And it's pretty intense. Like, this is a positive for us, of course, but it's a bunch of dead bodies. And Margo is a little bit freaked out by this, understandably. And she says to the Fairy Queen, Jesus Christ, what did you do? She acts as if the Fairy Queen killing everybody is like the worst thing that could have happened. But these people were going to murder your entire crew. So I really don't know what outcome you were hoping for. Because people were going to die either way. Am I wrong? Like, this is just, I mean, we don't want everybody to die. But apparently these pirates were murderers and we're fine with that. I'm not really going to cry about it. But Margo's pretty shook up over it. And the Fairy Queen is like, you know, I appreciated that you were coming to the boat's defense, so I decided to do you a favor. We got what we needed from these pirates. And as she says this, she's dropping teeth that she has collected from the pirates into this little glass jar. And it's the most unnerving sound. I hate it. And the Fairy Queen says, because the episode starts before Margo finds out that the boat has been captured at all, and she's back at the castle. She's arguing with Tick, I think, about planting mushroom fields. And this is something that the Queen has asked her to make the common people do. And it would basically be replacing all of their actual edible crops with worthless mushrooms that are apparently inedible. And of course, everybody balks at wanting to do this. But at this point, the Fairy Queen is like, it turns out that she has a like method to her madness, or so she says, at least. She says, you stood up to them. You were a queen. That's who I need you to be. The next time they don't plant a field of mushrooms for you, remember this room. And I guess what she's trying to say is, if you like, because she's saying you stood up to them. Margo didn't really. She went and talked to the boat, but we didn't see her like go back and tell the pirates like fucking no. I don't really understand the Fairy Queen's thinking here. She like, or at least the way she's saying it. She's framing it as if Margo was strong and withstood something, when it really felt to me more like the Fairy Queen was proud that Margo went and spoke to the tree and tried to reason with it. The reason she's giving doesn't match what I thought was happening, I guess is what I'm saying. And then when she says the next time they won't plant a field of mushrooms for you, remember this room. Are you saying that Margo should be willing to kill everybody in their room if they won't plant mushrooms? Are you saying that you will kill everybody who doesn't obey Margo if she stands up to them next time? Like, I just didn't really understand what she was trying to say here. But she then is like, oh, BT Dubs, you need to give back your eye that I definitely know you stole back. And she apparently doesn't know how Tick got it back. She doesn't know it was Tick at all. She is aware it's probably one of the two dudes that is standing behind Margo, but she chooses the other guy instead, and winds up like whispering in his ear a song that he hates, that will never leave his mind until he slowly goes insane, which is a real sort of Seinfeld joke to me. I rather liked it, but it is awful. But when she demands the eyeball back from Margo, Margo squashes her own eyeball in a really horrifying and baller moment, to be honest. And I just really, really am here for Margo never having two eyes again. The eye patch thing, it just really works for me. I kind of love it. So if they're just going to have this be the thing, I'm here for it. That's fine. But yeah, so she punishes this dude by giving him this, like, you know, slow madness. And as soon as she leaves the room, Tick is like saying, thank you so much for not telling her it was me. And Margo tells Tick to shut the fuck up. Because as far as she is concerned, this is not the time. She just like has to watch a man go slowly crazy, and she knows that and feels responsible for it. And honestly, it was Tick who stole the eye. He is the one who should be feeling guilty, and he doesn't seem to. He's just really glad to have gotten out of it. And I can see that bothering a person. It would bother me, you know? So that is that plot. We still don't know what's going on with like Elliot and his family, exactly where they're hiding, but I'm looking forward to finding out. So then let's go to what's going on with Julia, Katie, and Penny. Julia, there's a really interesting scene that I don't know what to make of it, but she is, God, guys, I'm sorry. A small aside here, because I was just like on the shot in Alice's house where she's like wrapping herself in plastic wrap in order to keep the thing from like getting into her, because apparently it can just go right through your skin. I know that this is an inappropriate thing to focus on, but Alice's titties are crazy. Am I wrong? Like, how? I don't think that they're fake, because I feel like you're not going to get implants that big in comparison to the rest of your body unless you are working in an adult industry. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she just decided to go big or go home. But it is out of control. Like, the outfits they have her in are, by many standards, pretty modest. And yet, whoa, it is just like this outfit that she's wearing. It's just like a simple white shirt, a long sleeve, high necked white shirt, and like a black skirt. But I just like, it's very distracting is what I'm saying. And I've noticed it, throughout the show. But I feel like this outfit in particular, with the shirt being as tight as it is, I was just like, God damn, girl. What? That is not fair. Anyway, okay, so Julia is coming out of like a restaurant or maybe the subway, I don't know. And she hands some money to a panhandler. And the woman grabs her by the arm as she's walking away, and her eyes have gone white. And she says, "You're missing the signs, Julia." And Julia's like, "What?" And she says, "I thought you'd be further along. We're going to have to push you." And she says, "What are you talking about?" And the woman comes back to herself and says, "I just said thank you." And Julia's like, "Oh, sorry." Well, you know what? I think she's coming out of the library, because when she walks away, it looks like she's on that same like walkway that she and Quentin were sitting on when they looked through the book about the keys. Yeah. So what does that mean? I have no idea. It's got to be one of the gods getting in contact with her. I want to believe it's Persephone, but Persephone has been able to just show up in person to chat. So I don't really know why they would come through this way. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a theory on this. But she is heading over to see Katie. And Katie reacts, like, there's a short conversation before she shows up between just Katie and Penny, where Penny says, like, losing magic has actually caused my psychic abilities to vanish, which is actually really nice. So there is a positive side to this for me, at least. And he wants to know, like, exactly how she's going to be able to do this magic. And he sees Mayakovsky's battery. And he's kind of like, "Are you sure that you want to use up that battery on me? Because, like, that's a lot of magic. That's a lot of power. I don't know that this is really worth it." And she essentially tells him to shut the fuck up, of course. "I stole it. It's my call." And he says, "You don't owe me anything, Katie." And she's like, "What? Of course I do. You got poisoned and are dying because you were trying to help me. If I just let you die without attempting to help you back, I mean, I couldn't live with myself." And he leans over and he's gonna kiss her, and he just starts coughing. I rather liked that moment, because that is a thing that happens, guys, when somebody is ill. So Julia comes in. Katie is like, "You are not going to fucking take this battery away from me. This is how it's being used, and you can either help me or you can fucking get out." And Julia is just like, "All right, so what's the fucking magic? Just tell me how to do this." It turns out that what they're going to do is summon a demon. And what follows is a pretty dope bit of magic. We haven't gotten to see a ritual like this in a minute, and I really like watching the synchronicity of the movements when they are performing magic together. So yeah, they're summoning it, and I just like, this demon looks really familiar to me. I don't know if he was like a demon in something else, but I kind of feel like he was. I should probably look up his IMDb. But he is, first of all, Astaroth, I think is his name. They pronounce it like with an E, and he corrects them. They're kneeling down, and he like tells them to please stand up again. Like, the kneeling thing is really weird. He's kind of a charming demon, to be honest. And so they have him come and take a look at Penny. And it turns out that basically what this is this demon eats cancer. And that he extracts it, basically performs surgery to remove tumors in exchange for being able to take the tumor and eat it. And I mean, that seems like a pretty good deal, I guess. At least somebody's getting some use out of it. and it's not in his body anymore. So he says that it's very advanced, and that when they're this advanced, they're the tastiest. And he tells them that he's going to have to perform surgery, and warns that it'll hurt. So he is able to just dig his fingers into Penny's abdomen. It's a really interesting scene because there's a lot less blood than you would think. It's not that there's no blood, but it doesn't have like the look to it like that you would expect when you tell somebody, oh yeah, the demon's just going to paw through your insides. It's like weirdly sort of, what's the word? Sterile? Is that the word I want? I was surprised by this. And as he does this, Penny turns up behind him and he looks over his shoulder and Penny is just like, dude, yeah, I astrally projected because that really fucking hurts. And he says, no shame, bro. To which I'm like, all right, everybody calm down. And eventually he does manage to get it out. And it is a process. It is really hard to watch him like squishing around in this kid's insides. And when he pulls it out, it's like this, what's the word I want? It looks almost like kidney sized or something. But yeah, he says, I think I've got it. Ooh, it's juicy. I'll save it for later. And he like puts it in his coat pocket. And then he says, I'll close the wound, and puts his hand over it. And like there had been a bunch of blood before, but after he puts his hand over it to close the wound, the blood is gone. His fingers aren't bloody anymore. It's a weird thing. And then all of a sudden he's gone. And Penny is laying there with no apparent wound, no blood, no nothing. He looks fine. He looks like he just did a second ago. He smiles at Katie, and then his head sort of turns and he stares. And she starts shaking him, and the demon leans over and she starts like taking his pulse, and she realizes that he's gone. And the demon just looks at her and says, I'm sorry, you called me too late. And she starts to really panic. I like this demon, I'm going to say again, because the demon could have just been portrayed as like, oh, I don't give a shit, I got mine. But he genuinely is like, well, that's a bummer. Sorry about that, Meanwhile, Penny is standing astrally behind them, staring in disbelief, and just says, shit. And that is the end of the episode. I thought that there was like another little thing right after that, but apparently not. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with Penny, but I hope that it gives them something else to do. Maybe that this is part of, we have to push you, Julia. I don't know. Or maybe it's part of him having to find the key, I forgot to mention too, that the whole thing with like Alice and her father, getting the lamprey out of her father, she had to use that cattle prod again. And the lamprey had warned her before she did it, your father's heart is really weak. And if you use that on me, I don't think he's going to make it. And she takes this as the lamprey just fucking with her head, which I probably would have too, to be honest. I don't think I would have bought it. So she goes and uses the cattle prod anyway. And her father does wake up and does seem to be okay. So there is a moment where you're like, oh yeah, fuck you, lamprey. You were just saying whatever. But then, 15, 20 minutes later, her dad has a heart attack and goes down. And the lamprey had said something to her about how it would have been better if I used your mom and laid eggs in your mom because she fucking sucks. But also I do kind of like the fact that your mom is the one you hate the most and she's going to be the one left and I'll be taking away the one you care about. So, damn, lamprey, fucked up. But her dad is dead, and it's a weird, like, there's something about the moment where her father dies where I feel like the show wants me to, like, care about it more than I do. They have, like, that whole, like, tinnitus, slow motion, like, barely any sound as her mom starts screaming. I'm bummed for her, but I don't really care that much. So it's just, I'm more interested in seeing how Alice reacts to this loss now that she has changed as much as she has. What exactly is her feeling about it going to be? Does she have the same attachment to her dad that she had before? Has that shifted at all? Will her dealing with grief in the midst of everything change anything for her? Who knows? But I am curious about it. And yeah, so that's it. I think I've covered everything, unless I'm mistaken. We didn't see any Josh this episode. Don't know what's going on with him. But I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that we kind of like haven't seen in a while. I think he's really the only one, because he started to feel like he was really a part of things. And now I'm like, okay, no, it's still our originals. He is more of a player than I expected, but he's not like, I don't think he's going to get one of the keys. Maybe he is going to get the key. Is he the fool? I don't know. I don't remember. But yeah. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you all again very, very much for coming and hanging out with me. Thank you to Nicole for commissioning this episode. Hopefully, nobody was trying to comment in the live chat because I couldn't see anything. Sometimes there's a malfunction, but I think nobody commented. So hopefully we're good. And I will be seeing you all again soon. Actually, tomorrow with the next episode. So stay tuned. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.